This is Bone Chillers to disturb your dreams. Dare to join us? Click subscribe, ring the bell. But remember, we cannot guarantee your safety from the nightmares that await. Prepare to be thrilled, chilled, and filled with a sense of dread you'll find nowhere else. Welcome to the darkness. We've been waiting.
Dark labor. The moon was at its highest peak when the unknown woman, cloaked in mystery, staggered into the small-town hospital. She clutched her swollen belly, writhing in agony as the labor pain surged through her. The nurses scurried around, their routine calmness replaced with a palpable fear and curiosity. Nobody recognized her, yet she seemed to hold an eerie familiarity, a kinship with the night itself. As she was led to the delivery room, her screams echoed through the sterile halls, their intensity rising like a symphony of despair. The dimly lit room became a stage for a spectacle yet to unravel, casting long, dancing shadows that mirrored the uncertainty and apprehension in the air. Suddenly, without any warning, a gust of cold wind whipped through the hospital. The overhead lights flickered erratically as the temperature plummeted, sending shivers down everyone's spine. The woman's screams crescendoed into a deafening roar that filled every corner of the building, silencing everything else. As the last echoes of her scream faded, a thick, black smoke began to seep from her body. It slowly filled the delivery room, blotting out all light, and began to creep along the floors and walls, slithering through the halls and rooms until the entire hospital was engulfed. The dark smoke seemed to throb with an unseen power, swallowing the cries and pleas of the people inside. When the smoke finally dissipated, the hospital was eerily silent. The woman was gone, leaving behind only the echoes of her torment. The staff and patients remained, but they were irrevocably changed. Their eyes glowed with an unholy radiance, their faces etched with an otherworldly calmness. They moved robotically, their previous panic replaced with an unsettling serenity. In the delivery room, lying in the woman's vacated bed, was a newborn child. His eyes were as black as the smoke that had filled the hospital, and a chilling smile played on his lips. He looked normal, but his presence filled the room with a power that was impossible to ignore. Word soon spread through the small town about the strange occurrence. The police, the church, and the locals all attempted to understand what had transpired. However, the hospital staff could not remember any details. It was as if they were under a spell, their minds wiped clean of the traumatic event. Days turned into weeks, and a sense of normalcy began to return. But the black-eyed child grew at an abnormal rate. Within a month, he resembled a 6-year-old. He didn't speak but communicated his needs effectively. And strangely, the hospital staff catered to him as if under an enchantment, showing devotion and loyalty that felt uncanny. As time passed, the child started to exert his influence over the town. Crops began to wither, livestock fell sick, and an unseasonal darkness descended. The townsfolk, in their despair, turned to the local church. The priest, an old, wise man, recognized the signs of an old prophecy, a prophecy of a dark lord born from an unknown woman in the heart of night. In his desperation, the priest rallied the townsfolk. "We have brought this upon ourselves," he said. "This is our penance. We must act before the darkness consumes us all." The townsfolk, under the priest's guidance, prepared for a battle they didn't understand against a foe they couldn't comprehend. The hospital was barricaded, trapping the child inside, and ancient prayers and rituals were invoked. On the night of the showdown, the skies raged with a ferocious storm. The priest, leading the townsfolk, stepped towards the hospital, the air filled with their collective fear and determination. They chanted the sacred words, their voices ringing loud and clear over the howling wind. As they reached the final verse, the storm ceased abruptly. The hospital doors burst open, revealing the child. His eyes blazed with fury, his small frame exuding an inconceivable power. But the townsfolk stood their ground. They held onto their faith and continued their chant. The battle between light and darkness raged through the night. In the end, as dawn broke, the child let out a screeching cry that echoed across the town. He turned into a shadowy figure before disappearing entirely, leaving behind the silent town and a relieved, exhausted crowd. the hospital and the town slowly returned to normal. Yet, the memory of the Dark Lord remained, a chilling reminder of the night that had changed them forever. Every strange occurrence, every unexpected visitor, every unusual night stirred the fear that lived deep within their hearts. The fear of the Dark Lord's return. Carnage unleashed. The small town of Crestwood, nestled deep in the heartland, was a tranquil place, with its peaceful forests and serene lakes. But on that fateful day, the calm was shattered by an unspeakable horror that descended upon the unsuspecting residents. The quiet morning was disrupted by a blinding flash of light, followed by a thunderous explosion that reverberated through the air. In an instant, the once peaceful town was enveloped in chaos and devastation. A nearby nuclear power plant had suffered a catastrophic failure, spewing radioactive fallout into the atmosphere. The fallout settled upon the unsuspecting wildlife, twisting them into bloodthirsty monsters, hungry for human flesh. Samantha, a young wildlife biologist, had been studying the local fauna for years. She had seen firsthand the beauty and grace of the creatures that inhabited these lands. But now, her beloved animals had transformed into grotesque abominations, their once docile natures replaced by primal instincts. As the town descended into panic, Samantha knew she had to find her family and get them to safety. Armed with her knowledge of the wildlife and her love for her family, she ventured out into the nightmare that had replaced her hometown. The once serene forest now echoed with eerie growls and guttural howls. Samantha's heart pounded in her chest as she crept through the overgrown woods, her senses heightened to the slightest rustle in the underbrush. Every step was a cautious dance, her eyes darting from shadow to shadow, afraid of what lurked within. She clutched a small pocket knife, her only line of defense against the monstrosities that now prowled the land. Suddenly, a low growl pierced the silence, and Samantha froze. Through the dense foliage emerged a creature she could barely recognize as a deer, its eyes glowing a malevolent red. It lunged at her with unnatural speed, its antlers transformed into gnarled and deadly appendages. Samantha narrowly evaded the vicious strike, her heart pounding in her chest. As she continued her desperate journey, Samantha encountered more of these abhorrent creatures. Wolves with razor-sharp fangs, birds with wings stretched and twisted into macabre shapes, and once majestic bears reduced to hulking masses of muscle and claws. They all bore the mark of the radioactive fallout, their minds consumed by an insatiable hunger for human flesh. Finally, Samantha reached the outskirts of the town. The once familiar streets were now deserted, save for the terrifying predators that roamed freely. She knew she had to reach her family's cabin, a safe haven nestled deep in the heart of the forest. Her heart pounding, Samantha sprinted through the abandoned streets, the monsters in pursuit. Their growls echoed in her ears, their hot breath on her neck. She reached the cabin and slammed the door shut, gasping for breath. Inside, her family huddled together, fear etched on their faces. Samantha's mother clutched her tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her father, a retired hunter, surveyed the room, his eyes filled with determination. "We can't stay here," he said, his voice filled with grim resolve. "We have to find a way to escape." Samantha knew he was right. They couldn't stay hidden forever, and the creatures would only grow more desperate as their hunger intensified. They devised a plan to make a run for a nearby evacuation center, hoping against hope that it hadn't been overrun. Under the cover of night, they set out, their hearts heavy with both fear and determination. The forest was alive with eerie noises, and their path was fraught with danger. The creatures lurked in every shadow, their eyes gleaming with an unholy hunger. As they ran, the creatures closed in, nipping at their heels, but the family pushed forward, their will to survive overpowering their fear. At last, they reached the evacuation center, their bodies battered and their spirits shaken. Samantha's family was among the fortunate few who survived the nightmare that had consumed Crestwood. They witnessed firsthand the horrors that the nuclear blast had unleashed upon the innocent animals, turning them into mindless predators. It was a chilling reminder of the devastating power of man-made disasters. Years later, Samantha still carried the scars of that nightmarish ordeal. She had dedicated her life to advocating for the protection of the environment, spreading awareness of the potential consequences of unchecked human actions. The story of Crestwood served as a haunting reminder that the balance of nature was fragile, and the consequences of our actions could be more terrifying than any nightmare. The Sushi Master's Feast. In the heart of the culinary universe, Paris's Michel Leclerc had earned the title of a renowned French chef. His culinary conquests were the talk of the town, and his fame eventually reached the shores of Japan, inviting an invitation from the enigmatic sushi master, Akio Yamamoto. Michel was intrigued. To be invited by such a reputed figure was an honor. Brushing off his initial apprehensions about the mysterious nature of the invitation, he decided to embark on a journey to the land of the rising sun. Yamamoto's residence, situated in the heart of a densely forested area, looked more like an ancient Japanese castle. The tall, bamboo fence hid secrets beyond comprehension. Michel was welcomed into the sprawling mansion with quiet deferity. The evening commenced with a sophisticated array of delicacies. Every course was a tantalizing ballet of flavor, texture, and presentation, demonstrating Yamamoto's mastery over his craft. The crowning glory, however, was a rare steak served to Michel. Called the kami no ikimono, it was reputed to contain a secret mix of herbs capable of inducing deep sleep. In a matter of minutes after sipping the potion, Michel's vision blurred and darkness overcame him. As if sucked into a swirling void, he fell into an oblivion. Awakening from the dark abyss, Michel found himself in a small, metal cage, cramped and cold. His rich attire replaced with rags, his chef's hat nowhere in sight. The floor of the cage was littered with straw, and he was surrounded by a cacophony of human whimpering and desperate cries. He was in a human farm. Anxiety surged within him as he noticed dozens of other cages nearby, each housing a horrified individual. The realization was horrifying. All were renowned culinary artists from around the globe, known for their unique talents. Every day, they were fed a strict diet of grains and raw fish. The same haunting melody of a Japanese shakuhachi would play every evening as Yamamoto approached the cages, studying his prisoners with an unsettling intensity. One day, Michel overheard Yamamoto talking with a henchman. "The kami no ikimono has perfected their senses," the sushi master had said. "They will yield the finest flavors." Suddenly, the horrifying reality dawned upon Michel. The master sushi chef was not interested in them for their culinary skills, but for the culinary experience they could provide. The potion had not only entrapped them but also honed their senses to enhance their flavors. Gripped by a chilling fear, Michel began to plot his escape. With his heightened senses, he started to observe his surroundings closely. His cage was near a thick forest, the guards changed every 6 hours, and Yamamoto was absent during the afternoon, busy with his mysterious culinary sessions. Days turned into weeks, and Michel's plan was nearing completion. His only chance of escape was during the changing of the guards, and he would have to risk everything. The day of the escape arrived. His heart pounded in his chest as the guards changed shifts. Summoning every ounce of courage, he unlocked the cage using a bone pin he had whittled down over the weeks. Silent as a shadow, he slipped out, leaving the horrifying human farm behind. However, just as he was about to disappear into the dense forest, he tripped an alarm. Klaxons blared, echoing through the entire estate. Michel ran for his life, his every heartbeat resonating with the wailing alarms. He could hear the guards closing in, but he did not dare look back. As he burst into the forest, an arrow whistled past him, grazing his arm. Ignoring the pain, he continued to sprint until the alarms and barks faded into the distance. Exhausted and injured, Michel finally slowed down. He was free, but his freedom tasted bittersweet. He looked back at the monstrous mansion hidden behind the trees, vowing to return, not as a helpless chef, but as the nightmare of the sushi master. His resolve marked the beginning of a darker chapter in the terrifying tale of the sushi master's feast. The harbinger of the silent storm. In the peaceful town of Willow Creek, where everyone knew everyone else, lived a young boy named Aaron. He was a peculiar child, known for his vivid imagination and the lifelike dreams that often occupied his nights. However, one dream, in particular, chilled him to the bone. It was a vision of an ominous storm and an inexplicable, impending doom that left him paralyzed with fear. Despite his efforts, the townsfolk merely dismissed it as the product of an overactive imagination. One sweltering summer day, the wind began to grow colder, and the sky darkened. An eerie silence descended upon Willow Creek as birds halted their songs, and a feeling of dread filled the air. The townsfolk looked at the brewing storm warily, whispering prayers under their breath, but shrugged it off as just another seasonal shift. Aaron, however, knew better. His dream was coming to life, and he could feel the tension growing. As thunder rumbled in the distance and the first drops of rain started to fall, he saw the birds, robins, sparrows, and crows stop mid-flight, tumble from the sky, and crash onto the ground below, lifeless. Aaron screamed out, "Look! The birds! They're all dead." The sight of dead birds silenced the townsfolk. They recalled Aaron's dream, their disbelief turning into fear. A sudden gust of icy wind swept through the town, chilling them to the bone and echoing the dread they felt. The storm was here. Aaron felt a knot in his stomach. He remembered the rest of his dream, the terror that would follow, and knew he had to convince everyone to seek safety. "We need to find shelter," he urged them, his voice barely audible over the howling winds. As if responding to his plea, a bolt of lightning cleaved the sky, illuminating the ominous clouds and striking the town's ancient oak. It erupted into a fiery blaze, casting monstrous shadows on the horrified faces of the townsfolk. Now, they believed the boy. Chaos erupted as they scrambled towards the town's old bunker, seeking refuge from the storm's wrath. Once inside, the townsfolk watched helplessly as the storm ravaged their peaceful town. Homes were destroyed, the landscape was reshaped, and all that was familiar was stripped away under the relentless onslaught. They huddled together, their faces pale, and their hearts heavy with the reality of their situation. Aaron sat amongst them, his face a mirror of their fear, but his eyes carried a determined glint. The storm raged for hours, and when it finally subsided, they emerged from the bunker, apprehensive and afraid. Willow Creek was unrecognizable, a ghost of the tranquil town it once was. They were survivors in the ruins of their own home. In the days that followed, they began to rebuild, their hearts heavy but hopeful. The sight of dead birds remained an eerie reminder of the terror they'd faced. But from that fateful day forward, Aaron's dreams were no longer dismissed as figments of imagination. They had become harbingers of what might come, prophesied to be heeded. The harbinger of the silent storm was a horrifying tale of a boy's nightmare turned reality, a lesson in the power of nature, and a testament to the resilience of a community. It was a grim reminder that sometimes, the most terrifying monsters are not those lurking under our beds, but the ones that come alive in the silence of an impending storm. Three sisters, one curse, blood and diamonds. Once adored as inseparable triplets, Hazel, Mabel, and Greta, now just three estranged sisters, sat around the polished mahogany table at the office of their late grandmother's attorney, Mr. Blackwood. A looming tension hung in the air. Their grandmother, the eccentric Mabel de Winter, had passed away and the only thing left was her will. They were to receive a priceless heirloom, an opulent diamond necklace, dubbed the Marquess of Shadows. The necklace was infamous for its radiant, pear-shaped diamonds and an unsettling backstory of tragedy and curse. "The conditions are quite peculiar," Blackwood droned, peering at them over his glasses. Mabel wanted the one who would inherit the Marquess of Shadows to prove their strength, physically and psychologically. She has left clues within her mansion. The sister who solves them and survives the ordeal shall be deemed worthy. The Grand de Winter mansion was as imposing as ever, with its Gothic architecture and eerie shadows. It was said to be haunted, a claim supported by the sisters' own childhood experiences. The hallways echoed with the whispers of the past, and the eyes of portraits seemed to follow them everywhere. The first clue led them to the dusty library. Each sister found a book with their name etched on it. Hazel, the oldest, was a professor of psychology. She quickly deciphered the riddles within her book, leading them to the forbidden North Wing, a place where they had not dared tread as children. Mabel, a renowned detective, used her sharp analytical skills to determine the correct door. Lastly, Greta, a professional climber, showed physical strength by ascending a perilous, decayed staircase leading to an attic. In the attic, they found 3 chairs arranged in a circle and a note. "Speak your darkest fears. The Marquis of Shadows must know who it adorns." Each sister took a seat. The room seemed to constrict, the air growing dense as they began to share their darkest fears, unveiling insecurities, anxieties, past traumas. As the confessions poured out, the necklace began to glow, radiating an ominous light. Shadows danced across the room, grotesque figures spawning from the corners, embodying the fears they had just confessed. The figure of a scornful academic committee towered over Hazel, threatening her prestige and reputation. For Mabel, it was a monstrous embodiment of a cold case victim she failed to save. Greta saw herself falling endlessly, never hitting the ground, just an endless abyss of failure. The sisters screamed, backing away from the horrifying illusions. But as they watched each other's torments, an understanding dawned upon them. Despite their differences and past disputes, they were sisters. Sharing their fears had awakened their long-lost bond, a stronger weapon than any individual strength they possessed. The sisters stood, locked arms, facing their manifested fears together. As they did, the glow from the necklace intensified, piercing the shadows. One by one, the fearsome illusions began to dissipate, until only the 3 sisters remained, panting heavily but united. The following day, they returned to Mr. Blackwood's office. The necklace sat gleaming on the table. "We have decided," Hazel began, Mabel and Greta nodding in approval, "that we will keep the necklace together. Its place is in the De Winter mansion." "Our place is together." Mr. Blackwood raised an eyebrow, then smiled, a rare gesture. "Then, you have fulfilled the condition. Your grandmother would be proud. The Marquis of Shadows has finally found worthy heirs." Little did they know, that was the real test their grandmother intended, not a battle for individual triumph, but a battle for unity, to mend their broken bond. Through their shared journey, the sisters found that the true treasure was not the cursed necklace, but their rekindled sisterhood, a testament to their resilience and unity. The Marquis of Shadows, while considered a curse to others, became a symbol of unity for the sisters, forever reminding them of the strength they discovered within themselves and each other.
Thank you for watching, and remember, the darkness awaits. Until our paths cross again, stay fearful and stay subscribed.